Audio note: there are sound issues throughout the footage. The volume was originally set to 100% and was so loud and distorted that most of the early dialogue was incomprehensible. It sounded like the speakers were blown. Even after turning it down to 8%, there were still problems hearing due to background noise, a barking dog, overlapping voices, radio chatter, and Pomplin's movement. Some of the dialogue is paraphrased to the best of my ability. Camera note: this video is from Officer Pomplin's body cam. He moves around a lot and rarely stays in one place for long, so the footage can be jumpy and hard to follow. That, combined with the noise and clutter, adds to the chaos. 9:15 to 9:33. Entry and early drug discovery, 9:15 a.m. The video begins with officers ramming the front door. As they enter, the first thing you see is a scared child. The house is extremely filthy. The floors are completely covered in clothes and junk. In some areas, there's no walkway at all. You actually have to walk on stuff to move through the space. Countertops are stacked with random items, and liquor bottles are everywhere. The filth and hoarding are immediate and overwhelming. The mess you see in Nick's kitchen when he shows it on stream is nothing compared to the rest of the house. That one space is clearly staged. It's obvious he only cleans the visible area specifically for streaming. 9:16 a.m. Kayla and April are being brought out of the house and led outside. A dog can be heard barking in the background. 9:17 a.m. officers call to a child who is downstairs. The kids are being removed from the house while the search begins. One of the officers goes downstairs to retrieve the youngest child. She comes up holding the officer's hand. She speaks to him, but the audio was unclear due to background noise, so I couldn't make out what she said. As they head toward the door, she pauses to pick up the cat so she can take it outside with her. The search continues. A nitrous tank is visible in the house. 9:21 a.m. Nick can be heard outside yelling, "Get out of my house." He says something about probable cause and a search warrant. He sounds indignant. 9:22 a.m. Officer Pomplin walks out to his squad car to get gloves. 9:23 a.m. As he returns, the camera catches all of the kids sitting on the ground outside with Kayla. They are huddled against the house. The scene is heartbreaking. 9:24 a.m. Kayla is taken back inside and searched. 9:25 a.m. Officer Pomplin enters a bedroom where other officers are photographing drugs and paraphernalia found on top of a red mini fridge. The fridge is being used as a nightstand. 9:28 a.m. They begin photographing evidence inside Nick's streaming room. The room is far smaller than expected, and the condition is much worse than anything seen on stream. There are bottles of alcohol everywhere. The entire space is buried under hoarded junk, electronics, collectibles, and random gear. His 5-monitor setup and other equipment are visible, but everything around it is chaotic. The curated background people see during streams is a total facade. They go through a bag full of brown glass bottles, each one wrapped in tissues. 9:33 a.m. An officer enters and informs them that cocaine was found in the bedroom where Kayla and April had come out of earlier. 9:33 to 10:01. Briefing, confrontation, and arrests. 9:33 a.m. Some of the officers meet up in the entryway and brief each other on the situation. One mentions that Nick is trying to ask them the questions instead of answering theirs. Another officer says they need to get statements, figure out who lives in the house, and call family services. The audio was unclear due to background noise, so the dialogue here is paraphrased to the best of my ability. Officer Pomplin goes back into the master bedroom where officers are still going through the red fridge being used as a nightstand. He then heads outside to talk to Nick for the first time, at least from what's visible on this camera angle. Pomplin tells Nick, "We want to ask you some questions, a quick interview. We want to get an idea of the layout of the house, where the nanny is at, and who all stays here." Nick immediately pushes back and asks, "What's your probable cause?" Pomplin replies, "You have the search warrant." Nick stands there with his arms crossed. He's calm, but he looks like shit. He says, "Cool, you have no probable cause." Pomplin asks, "Are you willing to talk with me?" Nick responds, "Sure." Then immediately adds, "You still have no probable cause." Pomplin says, "I'm not discussing that. You've been given the search warrant. You know how this works." Nick again says something about probable cause. 9:38 a.m. Nick has read his Miranda rights. They begin questioning him about the children and other adults in the home. Pomplin confirms Kayla is his wife and then asks about the other woman. Nick gives April's name and says she's a friend. He says she does not reside there. Pomplin tells him she came out of the bedroom. Nick replies, "Okay, so she came out of the bedroom." Pomplin says, "When I have people over, they don't go in my bedroom." Nick snaps, I don't give a shit what you do. Pomplin stays calm and says, I'm just asking questions. Nick tells him, You're not. You're making statements. Pomplin asks, Where do you stay in the residence? Nick says, All over. It's my house. Pomplin asks, Do you stay in the master bedroom? Nick says, When I'm in there, I stay in there. Sure. Pomplin asks, Is that where you sleep at night? Nick says, Yes. Pomplin responds, That's all I needed to know. He then asks, Do you want to tell me where things are in the house to help expedite the search? Nick says, Where what things are? Pomplin replies, You saw the warrant. We're looking for controlled substances. Nick says, I'm not admitting to anything. That's ridiculous. You still have no probable cause. Pomplin says, We're going to be searching the house. We're going to be contacting family services. Nick asks, Why? Pomplin says, Because we've already found cocaine in the house. Nick just stares at him. Pomplin adds, We're not here on a whim. Nick says, Yes, you are. Pomplin says, No, we're not. Nick repeats, Yes. Pomplin tells him, We came here looking for controlled substances. We were only in the house about 10 minutes and already found some. Nick responds, I don't know anything about it. Nick says something about family services and mentions the grandparents. Pomplin tells him, That's most likely what will happen, but family services has to be involved. We'll put them with a family member if we can. 9:42 a.m. Nick and April are both handcuffed in the driveway, facing each other. It's almost cinematic. April is looking at him with a pouty face and puppy dog eyes. She's wearing black cutoff shorts and a black long-sleeve crop top. As Nick is being walked to the squad car, he tells the officer, I hope you catch gonorrhea and die. Before putting him in the vehicle, they stop to photograph the sores on his arms. He has a lot of them. Nick asks, Are you going to arrest my wife too? Pomplin tells him, Yes, but we're going to have her stay here and stay with the kids until family services and the grandparents get here. Nick is visibly seething. Pomplin says, I'll come and talk to you when we're done and at the jail. The audio was unclear due to background noise, so I couldn't make out Nick's response. Pomplin then walks away from Nick and over to April. He introduces himself, explains what's going to happen, tells her she's going to jail, and asks if she has any questions and whether she's been Mirandized. April says, No, but I want to ask. Pomplin interrupts to confirm she has been read her Miranda rights. She has. He begins asking her questions. Pomplin, How long have you been here? April, Not that long. Maybe a month. I'm trying to find my own place. Pomplin, So you've been living here? April, Yep, I stay in the sunroom a lot. I've known the family for quite a while. Pomplin, You came out of the bedroom with Kayla, right? April, Yes. Pomplin, You were hanging out in there? April, Yes. Pomplin, What were you doing in there? April, Kayla was sleeping and I was changing clothes. Pomplin tells her they're executing a narcotics search warrant. April shakes her head no, as if she's confused, in disbelief, or pretending not to understand. Another officer asks, You were changing clothes in there? April, Yes. He follows up, You keep stuff in there? April, Yes. At that point, another officer walks up holding 2 pairs of shoes. He puts one pair down on the ground. April looks at them and says, Those aren't mine. The officer apologizes and says, Sorry, there's a lot. April looks at the other pair, still in his hand, and says, Those are mine. He places them on the ground. They're slip-on sandals with straps. April tries to put them on while handcuffed as they continue to ask her questions. They ask where she sleeps when she's staying at the house. April says, Sometimes I stay in the sunroom. There's a couch in there. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, so sometimes I sleep next to Kayla on the bed. She interrupts to ask for help putting on her sandals. The officer bends down and helps her get them on her feet. When he finishes, the audio becomes harder to understand. The audio was unclear due to background noise, so the dialogue here is paraphrased to the best of my ability. One of the officers says something about the controlled substance search warrant and adds, I'll let you think about that. April shakes her head no again, clearly overwhelmed or confused. They tell her she's being charged with a 5th-degree felony controlled substance offense. April reacts, Oh my God. The officer says, We'll go from there. Any questions for me? April responds, No. I wouldn't know what to ask. Like I said, this is, she pauses, scary. He tells her, We'll meet up later and try to make it more clear for you, then places her in a squad car. 9:47 to 10:24. Kayla refuses to speak. Evidence logging. First safe opened. 9:47 a.m. A female cop holding a big gun says Kayla refuses to speak without her attorney present. Kayla and the kids are still sitting on the ground against the house behind the cop. Kayla is sitting with her head on her oldest daughter's shoulder. It's a heartbreaking scene. As Officer Pomplin is walking away, I hear the female cop say, "I'm going to try to get her some clothes." I'm unclear who she was referring to. As Officer Pomplin walks through the disgusting house, you can hear him let out a huge sigh as he looks at everything. He puts on some gloves. As he gets into the bedroom, he asks, "Are we still going through things in here?" I had a hard time understanding all of the audio as the dog is barking loudly in the background. 9:48 a.m. The officer goes back to his car to get something. He drinks some Mountain Dew and gets some snuff. On his way back in, he passes Kayla and the kids again. He has interactions with another cop that I couldn't quite understand. Someone says something about the house being huge. 9:49 a.m. He heads back to his car again looking for something. Couldn't see what it was. On his way back in, one of the other cops is talking to the kids, obviously trying to make them comfortable. After he gets inside, again, the audio is hard to understand between background noises, radio chatter, and the dog barking. The dog is in the bathroom with a baby gate up. You can hear a conversation about drugs, firearms, and finding .22 casings. Officer Pomplin starts writing down a list of the evidence found. 1. Snort tube found on the nightstand fridge tested positive for cocaine. There are 4 cops searching the room. Officer Pomplin heads back to the squad car to retrieve evidence bags. Kayla is not sitting with the kids this time when he passes. 9:54 a.m. Officer Pomplin starts logging evidence again. Number 2. A glass vial that tested positive for cocaine from the nightstand. Number 3. 2 credit cards with April's name on them. All of this evidence is from the top of the Cuck fridge nightstand, which is covered in a bunch of miscellaneous junk like a Celsius can, a couple of candles, a spray bottle of something, maybe lube, and an unframed picture of Nick and Kayla laying on top of other junk. One of the officers picks up a bottle of pills and says, this is paraphrased from memory, I wasn't able to hear what he said verbatim, something like, "I found one of the kids' prescriptions right next to the cocaine. It has the name Celeste on it." The cops are mistaken. Celeste is Nick's mom. Is she giving him drugs or did he steal them? They look at 2 casino player cards with Nick and Kayla's names on them and take pictures of them. He turns to the other cops to see what they have found. 9:56 a.m. A cop pulls a paper bag out of an armoire and starts taking the stuff out of it. It sounds like he said something about a meth pipe, and then the other cop asks if they're used. He says this one looks dirty unless it's brown glass. 9:57 a.m. You can hear a cop say something about 2 spent .22 shell casings on the floor. One of the other cops finds pipes and bongs. They think they're unused. The dog is still barking incessantly. Officer Pomplin finally says, "We've got to do something about that dog." 9:58 a.m. Officer Pomplin documents in his report the big gun that was found under the bed. 10 a.m. Pomplin continues processing and logging the evidence. He is still in the bedroom where the red fridge nightstand is located. There's movement and chatter as the officers go through items. It's a mix of searching, bagging, and documenting. The audio is difficult to make out clearly because of overlapping voices, barking, and background noise. One of the officers says they found edibles. Another holds up what looks like a grinder and says it contains a white powder. They say they're going to test it. 10:01 a.m. You can hear a child back in the house. 10:02 to 10:24. Second safe, drugs inside, family services update. 10:02 a.m. He is documenting more evidence. A metal container and 2 glass ones with powder. A female comes in asking about taking something to the jail for Kayla. One of the officers finds something under the bed. Officer Pomplin asks, "What's that?" It sounds like the other officer says something about a Supreme Court unclear word license. I couldn't make out that word. 10:04 a.m. He asked the other cops, "Did you see Nick's arms? Track marks all down." He says, "Be cognizant of the possibility of finding needles," and then says they could be sores. Paraphrased, couldn't hear well. They mention they passed Nick in his car on the way to the house. 10:05 a.m. Another cop comes in and says they're interviewing mom right now. Pomplin says, "We're going to be a while." They discuss areas they want to search thoroughly: the master bedroom, 2 studios, and the inner and outer vault studio area. He calls the studio Nick's lair. They discuss what cops will be doing, what, and what to search. 10:06 a.m. Officer Pomplin says, "We need to do our due diligence for the kids, doing all we can. They are waiting for the kids and the dog to be picked up. They are splitting the cops up, 3 upstairs and others in other areas." 10:07 a.m. They discuss April's purse, ID, etc. They left it because there was cash in it. Officer Pomplin leaves 3 cops searching the bedroom, and he starts walking toward the front door. He says something about a lot of stuff being in the studio. You can see Kayla with what appears to be 2 family service workers at the front door. 10:08 a.m. Officer Pomplin goes downstairs. It looks like a family room with a fireplace, some arcade games, a drum set, and other kids' stuff. This section is outside the area that leads to Nick's studio. As he goes into Nick's studio, he passes through a small library-type room with lots of books and random things on the bookshelves. 10:09 a.m. When he gets into the streaming room, someone mentions vials and something about homemade whiskey. Officer Pomplin opens a Ziploc bag and pulls out a small box that looks like it has a picture of food on it. It looks to me like something you'd get out of the frozen food section. Then he pulls out different vials. One has a brown substance in it, and he says one of them has brine written on it. He says another one looks like it has whole pepper in it and comments that it's weird. He pulls out a bag of seeds. Again, they say something about it possibly being for homemade whiskey or something. 10:11 a.m. Officer Pomplin starts going through a pile of papers. He looks at a handwritten letter. I took notes on it because it was weird and confusing. It was about a father and a daughter and said things like, "A dad admits selfishness in crisis. A dad getting all the shit but no praise, and the daughter practiced her song just for dad." After Googling, I found out it's about a South Korean horror film called Train to Busan. Weird shit. Just documenting to be thorough. The next piece of paper is a letter from the county, the Department of Environmental Services. It's something about a building or shed or something. The next thing is a signed anime pic. That looks exactly like this. Next is an autographed picture of Eric Roland. It's signed, "Here's looking at you, Nikki." It has a lipstick lip print on it like kiss emoji and says, "P.S. look here," with an arrow pointing to the button area of his shirt. I tried to do an AI version. This is the best I could do. I couldn't get it exactly right, and especially the PS and the arrow. Next is a piece of unopened certified mail to Kayla with writing on the envelope. He then finds a cardboard box with question marks drawn on it in marker. He opens it, and inside there's a ton of shredded paper. He rummages through it and finds something that he thinks might have been a big shroom. He asks the other cop, and the cop says no. Officer Pomplin smells it and puts it back. It wasn't visible on the camera for very long. 10:46 a.m. Another cop comes in. He has a safe that he found under the bathroom sink in the master bathroom. It's a briefcase type safe that's locked, but it has part of a baggie hanging out. They were able to test the part that was sticking out, and it tested positive for cocaine. The officer leaves to go ask for the key. He gets a quick phone call, then asks Kayla for the key. She is with the 2 family service workers. He tells her, "We need the key or we're going to have to break it open." She says she doesn't know where it is. 10:41 a.m. They go outside. The kids are still sitting on the ground. The cops walk behind the vehicles and break open the safe with what looks like a pry bar and mallet. The safe is full of drugs, paraphernalia, and baggies. They take a photo and say, "Let's get it to a better location." On their way back into the house, another officer mentions that the grandparents are on their way. They take the safe to a small bathroom, place it on the toilet, and open it. There's a baggie that says KKK on the outside. They surmise it's ketamine. There's also a digital scale, snort tubes, a metal piece that looks like a crack pipe, and another metal item that looks like a spoon without a handle. He asks for another cop and says, "This is insane." His glove rips and he needs a new one. He says he thinks one is ketamine and the bites are either Molly or LSD. They start documenting the evidence. There's the baggie that was sticking out of the safe, which tested positive for cocaine. There are also some cards and a rolled up dollar bill. They find a large corner cut with white powder. There are Ziploc bags containing smaller bags. One of them has KKK written on it. Another Ziploc contains multiple small bags with powder. They find a digital scale, a metal pen or container, 2 snort tubes, and 2 cutters. 10:24 to 10:48. Studio search, gun safe, Kayla's return. 10:24 a.m. Officer Pomplun goes back into the studio. A cop tells him they didn't search the stuff that's covered in dust since it obviously hasn't been touched recently. One of them says there's a lot of weird stuff down there, like a bunch of pencil shavings. Pomplun says this is his hangout. I can't hear what the other cop says, but Pomplun responds, because you can't do it with your girlfriend and wife, I guess. I don't know. 10:25 a.m. He's searching through the artwork that's leaning against the wall, including the cat painting. You can see a close-up of a lot of the stuff that's usually behind Nick when he's streaming. They find a container or a box of something and say it looks like cornstarch inside. He starts going through all of Nick's collectibles, opening boxes and looking inside. He says there aren't other safes. A family service worker asks about collecting electronics for the kids and says they're going to grandma's. 10:32 a.m. Officer Pomplun goes into a room where there are lots of clothing racks with clean clothes hanging up. Kayla's in there with the family service workers gathering clothes for the kids. The officer asks about getting electronics for them. 10:33 a.m. Officer Pomplun goes to the garage. He finds out there's another safe and gets the equipment to break it open. 10:35 a.m. They open it. Inside, there are guns and ammo. He takes pictures of all the guns and the rest of the contents. One of the cops starts looking around at all the boxes and totes of stuff. He asks how long they've been living there. Officer Pomplun says, a while. The other cop says it looks like they have half unpacked boxes from moving or something. Pomplun says it might be April's stuff. She said she's only been here for a month. 10:37 a.m. Someone walks through with the dog on a leash. 10:38 a.m. An officer comes in and says there's another safe in the master bedroom closet. Officer Pomplun asks him to bring it out to the garage. They bring it in and break it open. Inside, there are Ziploc baggies, a rolled up $100 bill with white powder, rolling papers, a lot of THC cartridges, a scooper, and a small funnel. They're not sure what some of it is, but suspect fentanyl. They take pictures of it all. They leave the THC cartridges and don't put them into evidence. They say they'll test everything else at the station. Officer Pomplun starts documenting all the evidence in his report. Drugs, paraphernalia, guns, and ammo. He lists them all out, including the serial numbers on the guns. They discuss needing to do a basic sweep of the kids' rooms and the other bathrooms. 10:47 a.m. Kayla's mom arrives to pick up the kids and the dog. Again, you see the kids during this interaction. 10:48 a.m. Kayla walks in shortly after, looking strung out. She's wearing a backless shirt and you can see all of her back tattoos. 10:48 a.m. to end. Final sweep and personal reflections. 10:48 a.m. They come across a box with April's name on it. They open it and inspect the contents. They start going through the kitchen cabinets, focusing especially on the one with all the pills and medicines. 10:51 a.m. They think they've found needles, but realize they're actually syringes without needles, the kind used for administering liquid medications. They do a final quick sweep of the rest of the house. 10:55 a.m. Officer Pomplun goes back into the master bedroom walk-in closet with another officer who debriefs him on where they found previous evidence, like the bullet and the other safe. The other cop is in the back of the closet looking at a shelf, saying there are all kinds of THC, vapes, and adult stuff. You can't see it from Pomplun's point of view, but it's clear these items are out in the open, easily visible and accessible to anyone who walks in, including the kids. 10:56 a.m. They announce that everyone else is gone, and they start collecting all their stuff. 10:58 a.m. One of them brings up the incident where Nick threw the warrant on the ground. By 11 a.m., they all leave. Additional personal observations. The house has a very weird layout. The location of the master bedroom is especially concerning. It is very close to the main communal areas, making it easy for kids to overhear things they shouldn't, like sex noises, arguments, and other adult conversations or activities. The messiest and most hoarded areas of the house are the ones the adults spend the most time in. The streaming setup is highly curated. What viewers see on camera is a complete illusion. Behind the scenes, it's filthy, cramped, and chaotic. Not all of the drugs and paraphernalia were hidden. Some were left out in the open in areas kids could easily access if they are the inquisitive type, including the master bedroom, bathroom, and closet. It is heavy and honestly heartbreaking to witness the conditions the kids and animals have been living in. The filth, the chaos, the presence of drugs and weapons create an environment no child or pet should be subjected to. The dog lives confined to a bathroom. At least one cat was seen in the home. And the children, they were not just caught in the middle of a search. They have been living in this every day. You can feel the weight of that reality in almost every frame of the footage. Even basic things like clothing and mail were scattered randomly. Important documents were mixed in with fan art, trash, and drug gear. Nothing was organized, and there was no sense of separation between adult items and areas where kids lived and played. Finding Nick's mom's prescription bottle alongside the cocaine and paraphernalia raises bigger questions about his parents' role in all of this. Are they enabling it, turning a blind eye, actively involved? At the very least, it points to a serious lack of boundaries. At worst, it suggests a generational pattern of dysfunction that these kids are sadly now caught up in. It's also worth noting the behavior of the officers throughout the search. They were patient, respectful, and professional from start to finish. Despite the overwhelming filth, drug presence, and emotional weight of the scene, they kept their personal commentary to a minimum. They didn't mock or escalate. In fact, given everything they encountered, it's notable how restrained they were. While the search could have been even more thorough, it would have taken significantly longer, and they seemed focused on securing the most critical evidence while minimizing disruption to the children who were present. Final thoughts. I was not able to stop or rewind, so these are very off-the-cuff comments. The footage was a bit overwhelming. The house is so huge and cluttered that it is very disorienting to watch. Also, the officer we follow must be in charge, and he is all over the place. He sticks in one room for a few minutes, then shuffles between them so the footage is all over the place. However, we hardly see the kids at all, and all the officers act very kind and patient with the family. The footage was taken May 23rd, 2024, and it starts at 9:11 a.m. It starts in the police car as the officers approach the house. There is a dirty cat house tower and filled trash bags on the patio. Officer sees kids inside the house through the window. It takes about 6 knocks from the police on the door yelling search warrant before someone responds. One of Nick's daughters can be heard saying that Daddy told her not to answer the door. As soon as the door is open, it is a literal labyrinth of clothes and stuff. Hard to decipher where one room begins and another ends because every counter and table surface is covered in bottles, clothes, packages of food, and indicators of kids and their toys live there. There is not a lot of space to walk around the piles of stuff either. They find 2 females, April and Kayla, in the main bedroom. We have not seen them yet. The 6-year-old, stated by the officer, keeps saying something about her dad kept telling her not to let them in as the police begin to walk around the kitchen. The main room, kitchen, and dining room seem to be one big space, but again, hard to tell with furniture cues since everything is so cluttered and covered. Kayla shows up with her arms up, a very dry voice. She seems lethargic and out of it. There is some kind of room they walk by. Kids' room. It has a rainbow IKEA shelf in it, and it is completely flooded with junk and clothing. This room is an actual hoarder-looking room. There are a few moments where the officer seems to be covering the camera with his hand. Hard to tell if it is on purpose or accident. Literally just shit everywhere as they move about the house. Just so many random pile of clothes. There is a stairway that has some kind of chair or love seat. It's the size of half of a couch, just turned over upside down at the bottom of the stairs that clearly was done before the cops showed up. Not sure what that is all about. They have a big, fat, fluffy orange cat, though, and it's cute. 10 minutes in, and we still have not seen Nick on camera. The garage is very cluttered. Looks like they just moved in with all the boxes of stuff. Given it is the garage, though, it honestly looks like the most normal room in the house. Lots of filled, packed luggage bags, too. The officer goes back upstairs, and we get a quick close glimpse of one of the counters, and we can see food wrappers, bottles, a box of goldfish opened. At 9:23, we finally are outside and we see Nick meekly showing up in the driveway looking pissed, like he's about to cry and arms folded. He has short cargo shorts on and that shitty Jamaican-colored tank. The cop goes back in and starts getting supplies and gloves to start drug testing stuff in the main bedroom. A lot of this part of the video is just the cops gathering supplies and talking about their attack plan on the house because it is so large and has so much stuff. We are in the bedroom to test. There is a lamp on the nightstand that just has a random tube balancing on top of it. Very, very, very cluttered space with lots of shit. It is important to note that the bedroom is right there in the main hallway of the house. You would easily walk by it every day if you lived there. I say that because of all the shit they had in their room, it would be very easily accessible to the kids. As you walk by the outside of the room, you can look right under the bed and nightstands. The cops keep saying that the 2 adult females were found in this bedroom together. Incredible amount of bottles and makeup products and clothes, booze bottles and water cups on windowsills. The cop decides to go downstairs for a sec and give a quick scan of the stream room. We get a closer quick glimpse of the kitchen table just covered in stuff and loose documents. We enter the stream room, and oddly, the ceiling doesn't seem finished. It just has these latex brand sheets covering it. We head back upstairs to the bedroom. We can see shoes, garbage, and lots of clutter at the top. Of the stairs, they seem pretty dangerous with all the junk around the stairs. To 931, we see him swab around the pillow and it tests positive for cocaine. Then we see him pick up a black vial, looks like a lipstick tube, and when he unscrews it, we see white powder. The officer responds with a "oh yay." He takes a picture of it. The officer says there's a measurable amount of cocaine in the bedroom. At 933, in that master bedroom, a measurable amount of cocaine. They also find a large stack of cash, according to them. An officer then states that Nick is asking about probable cause. He wants to ask questions on probable cause. The main officer we are following calls Child Protective Services to the house. A senior officer who has been talking to Nick says that Nick feels he's been hurt. When calling Family Services at 937, the officer says, "We located a measurable amount of cocaine and there are 4 children here." During this, we catch a glance at the main kitchen counter and it is just completely covered in booze bottles, even over by the sink. It's a bit dark and confusing in the main part of the house, and without pausing and rewinding, I have a hard time making specific objects out. At 9:39, we head outside to deal with April and Nick and finally cuff and arrest them. April is in a really slutty top. I do not try to call out fellow women for how they dress, but it really is inappropriate to wear around kids and a married couple regardless of any other factor. And it's a black crop top that has a collar and it's cut in a way that shows her cleavage heavily and her stomach is out. She has a huge piece of rock jewelry in her belly button as well. She looks and sounds so dry. Honestly, it does not even look or sound like her. She actually looks like a tranny. Just very dry and unhealthy. For sure out of it and on something. Honestly, might just be hungover. Her throat sounds like it's drowning in sand. I cannot express how just gross she seems and out of it. 9:42. She has read her rights and refuses to speak without a lawyer. We see her cooperate easily with the officers and she gets handcuffed and out in the car with ease. We see the other officer cuff Nick and he is not fighting either. April asks for some shoes because she's barefoot. They keep asking her what room she has been hanging out at. She mentions the main room and kind of avoids the question. It seems obvious that she knew that her being in the bedroom with Kayla where all the cocaine was would get her in big trouble. Nick does look still very pissed and arms still crossed before he is cuffed. The officer is very kind and heads back in to get her shoes, which are just haphazardly placed at the top of the stairs. As the officer heads back in the house, the fat orange cat gets out, and the kids, who have been outside on the patio porch the whole time, say it can go outside. We can hear a kind officer ask the kids about their pets to calm them down. They seem to be actually okay. No crying and in decent spirits. I think Kayla is with them until a woman from Child Protective Services comes. She is the one in the white and black striped shirt. 9:46. We are back in the main bedroom to keep testing stuff. The officer we are following seems to be the head honcho as he keeps moving in and out of every room and making the calls and shots throughout, so we are often just walking around saying stuff. As he enters back into the bedroom, another officer mentions that they have found quite a bit of edibles in the room. They don't state what kind, but it can be assumed weed if you did not know they have edibles for shrooms, molly, and other mixtures that are actually easy and common to get, but also gummies just being accessible in the bedroom bothers me. At 9:47, the officer finally tests the black vial, and it's an instant blue swab. Cocaine right there on the bedstand. You could see it from the hallway. He continues to shuffle through the stuff on the bedstand, but the angle makes it a bit difficult to see exactly what is testing and touching on the stand. Then an officer tells him they found the rifle under the bed. The main officer heads out of the bedroom again, and we see a female officer taking care of Kayla, getting her ready to be dressed and sent to jail with the others. We go back into the bedroom, and we see the rifle in its box on the bed. The box is literally just a cardboard box, and the fun is just sitting in it with styrofoam. Not locked up at all, and it's a huge rifle. At 9:50, we hear an officer say that they found 2 spent casings in the bedroom. Found snort tube on nightstand, test positive for cocaine, and it's the first piece of evidence bagged. There are some open drinks and tubes on the bedstand. The black vial is bagged up as evidence. 2 credit cards in the name of April are found, and both the snort tube and the black vial were found right on top of the cards. At 9:54, we hear them say that someone named Celeste had their medication right on the bedstand, literally right next to the cocaine vial, snort tube, and credit cards. The officer moves down to search around the floor around the bed and stand, and we see that the bedstand has actually been The red fridge Nick has been bringing around the whole time. He opens it, and I can only make out some jars of jam on the door from the angle, so food was there for sure. Food and meds on top of an easily accessible stand next to cocaine. There is a white stuffed animal and a hairbrush at the foot of the fridge right next to the bed, so it does seem like the kids come in here. Given that there are a few toys around on the floor, there seems to be a small laptop also stuffed into the space between the bed and fridge, and the light looks like it's on. There is no comment on this by any officer. The rifle number is 20002638 and has multiple magazines with it in the bedroom, says one of the officers. At 10, we hear them say they found even more edibles in the bedroom. They confirm again that the rifle was found under the bed. One officer pulls out a metal funnel, vial, object that is found with another glass vial with some kind of white powder in it. This was found in the shelf under the TV in the bedroom. They test the white powder and there is a faint blue on the swab, and the officer indicates that this means it could be a mixture. He bags it for evidence. 10:03, they find some weed pipes and test them for other drugs. An officer comments at 10:04 in frustration that there is just so much stuff in here. The main officer tells them to be mindful of needles as he now believes it could be a possibility. They are just continuing to dig through all the shit on the floor. There is a big luggage case that he opens up, and it is completely packed with clothes and objects. The suitcase was already under a huge pile of clothes he pushes off of it. At 10:06, the officer decides to split up the team. He is leaving the bedroom to the others as he wants to go down and test Nick's studio. One of the other officers calls it a little lair, LOL. They also find April's purse in the bedroom. We head downstairs to the studio at 10:08, and we also cross paths with the Child Protective Service woman. There is a very cluttered and full library room right before you enter the studio. There are 4 monitors with the Joker painting tucked behind them out of sight, LOL, and they are still on, and it looks like he ended some stream. Very full cluttered shelves that the officers dig through. They oddly keep finding random $5 bills throughout his junk. It looked like some of them might have been dollar origami, but some of them were just stuffed into cups or pen holders. The officer tests a few things he finds, but nothing suspicious besides ton of bottles and trash seems to be in here. One officer does find some baggie of weird stuff. They guess maybe cloves or pepper. The main officer thinks it might be a whiskey starter. Then, an officer brings a big metal safe down at 10:12, and they said they found it in the bathroom. We can see a dirty Ziploc baggie poking out of it. The officer says he will deal with it in a bit, and they go back upstairs. At 10:16, we are just rummaging through the black shelves and testing random bits, but nothing is really down here. At 10:17, the officers with the safe returns and asks for help with it, and we go up to a small red bathroom on the main floor. I have to assume this is the main bathroom everyone uses when they don't need to shower, and the safe was found in here. The officer says it was under the sink, but the sink is one of those pillar sinks, so there is no bottom. I wonder if it was just tucked off to the side. The safe is opened up and the contents are spread across the top of the toilet bowl for testing and evidence collecting. We can see a scale, blue snort tubes, and very dirty Ziplocs with cards and powders in them. At 10:19, he tests the cards and bag in one of the Ziplocs, and it tests positive for cocaine. Now we start bagging all of the objects in the bathroom safe and calling them out as evidence. Evidence 8, large corner cut. This is what they called the large bag with a huge amount of white substance in it. He will test it when they get back, he says. Evidence 9, Ziploc baggie containing multiple baggies. One baggie has powder, and it has KKK written on it. Evidence 10, Ziploc baggie containing multiple baggies with powder. Evidence 11, digital scale. Evidence 12, metal object, funnel, the officers are unsure, containing powder. Evidence 13, 2 snort tubes, plastic straws, and 2 cutters. After packing up all the contents in the safe at 10:23, we head back downstairs to the studio to continue testing. He goes through some drawers, and they are just packed with objects and loose documents. At 10:25, they continue to search through the library that is outside the studio room, and we then go back up the bathroom to double check for any evidence. We get a sight of a skeleton model that is just hanging out in the open space of the living room. We also see a dining room table by the windows just completely covered in junk and food packages. At 10:26, we head into a bathroom with a hot tub. Oddly, even though there is a ton of stuff in here as well, the floor is pretty clear of junk and at the cleanest of the rooms. So many lotions and makeup products are all over the counters, and of course more booze bottles empty and half full on the counter and windowsills. There are many windows in the entire house that just have booze bottles on them. At 10:30, we are still digging through the hot tub room. They head into some kind of laundry room, and it barely has any visible floor, just piles of clothes and filled laundry baskets. There is a hallway window, and there are two bottles of booze, and right next to them on the same windowsill are little teddy bear figures. Sad. I cannot tell what kind of room we are in at 10:38, but it seems to be some kind of closet room or bedroom. It just has shelves and more clothes. There is just a huge rack of so many adult clothes right in the middle. He digs through a random trinket box and finds another bullet inside that he takes as evidence. Louder with Crowder mug spotted at 3340 La Mau. At 10:36, we find another safe, and the officer searches for Kayla to get the code so they don't have to bust it open like he said. Then we head back into the garage, and right before it crashes on me, an officer says that they found two handguns hanging out in the garage. It ended at 10:37:27 for me.
As the sector covers the body cam footage, Andy Worski will actively cover up for several other people who were directly involved in Rekieta's criminal activity. Ashton will sit next to him, silently complicit, afraid to contradict or confront his co-host. This is not a prediction. This will happen as it's already happened many times before. The same applies for several other law-tubers who were friends with Rekieta, such as Sean from Potentially Criminal, etc. There are multiple other blatant child abusers on the exact same level as Rekieta, and the sector is more than happy to keep their secrets from you. As you weep for their children, you also sit around letting the next child abuser continue to get rich through YouTube's corrupt system. People like Alex Stein, Dick Masterson, or Ethan Van Sciver will simply act like this is all comedy fodder for their own channels, at most throwing in perfunctory acknowledgments of the actual tragedy involved. The same way Josh Moon and Kiwi Farms were either ignorant or complicit in hiding Rekieta's behavior. They are now ignorant or complicit in hiding the behavior of the next popular streamer, who will either get caught or remain unnoticed. Their role in society is to worship popular streamers. This is why all of them were so easily blindsided by this when it had been obvious for many years before Rekieta's arrest. When the next person gets outed, the eternal cycle of the normie pig cattle will repeat, where everyone who knew will go through a very long process of making excuses and then quick, desperate condemnation to avoid any scrutiny about the fact that they clearly would have to have known it was happening. They do, and you're no better than Rekieta if you ignore it. These people are truly subhuman and should not be enjoying their YouTube riches that you are responsible for giving them. What they should enjoy, instead, is prison.